All right. So moving on to other membrane organelles in the cell, you have your mitochondria and your chloroplast. So your mitochondria is where aerobic cellular respiration takes place, and this is where you get all of your energy from, and you use food molecules in order to generate this energy. In the chloroplast, which we found in plants and algae, we find that they use photosynthesis to gather all of their energy, and that happens in the chloroplast. So in this particular slide, what I need for you to take away is that the mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. It's like Georgia Power for your body. Every cell has its own Georgia Power, and it's called the mitochondria, and it generates energy, and the energy comes in a form called ATP, and we will look at ATP in the next slide. For chloroplast, it does a process called photosynthesis to generate energy. So chloroplast is the Georgia Power for plants. So you have two energy releasing molecules in cells. You have the mitochondria in our eukaryotic cells, in our animal cells, and then you have chloroplast, which you find in your plants and algae. So as I said, ATP is the energy that is made. ATP is the main energy that is made. ATP is the only energy that is made by a cell. So please, somewhere put down, circle, highlight that the energy of a cell is ATP. That's what a cell goes through. That's why it does all the work it does to make the energy known as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So right here, ATP, highlighted. Oh, I'd have marked up the screen. All right. So as we said, aerobic cellular respiration happens in the mitochondria. And I know this is going fast for you all because it sounds fast to me. But the process that happens in the mitochondria is aerobic cellular respiration. So you may just want to write down the process that takes place in the mitochondria is aerobic cellular respiration. It is done to generate ATP. Okay? So the process in the mitochondria is called aerobic cellular respiration, and it is done to generate ATP. That's the simple basics of what all three of these slides I've just said to you. So I'm not going to go through the glucose bonding. The only thing I want to share with you is this slide that says that we have 3 steps in that aerobic cellular respiration process. Remember, in the mitochondria, aerobic cellular respiration is taking place to generate ATP. Well, it does that in 3 steps. I know, it's like a recipe. The first step is called glycolysis. Glucose breaks down and makes ATP here. So what I need for you to know is that the first one is glycolysis. The second is the Krebs cycle, and it happens in the mitochondria. The third step is called the electron transport, or ETS, and it also happens in the mitochondria. So for the Krebs cycle, we see breakdown of glucose, release of CO2, and more ATP. And then you have electrons that move to the ETS. In the ETS, you'll use those electrons to transfer to oxygen, which is the final electron acceptor, and that then will go on and make ATP. The most ATPs made are in the ETS. So from this slide, you want to grasp that there are 3 steps to aerobic cellular respiration. The first is glycolysis, second is Krebs, third is ETS. You want to know that the ETS makes the most ATP, and that you want to know at the end of the process, you have oxygen, which is the final electron. This is the word I'm saying in case I sound funny. Electron acceptor, meaning it accepts. It doesn't deny, but it accepts the electrons. All right. Photosynthesis, as we said, is a process that takes place in the chloroplast, and it also is used to make ATP. And so as you'll see here, it has 3 stages: light capturing, light dependent, and light independent. And all of this is done to generate ATP so that we can then make glucose, water, and oxygen. So both processes require 3 steps in order to generate ATP. If you see this, and I think it does, this equation here, you should be able to point out that this is the equation for photosynthesis, knowing that light energy and carbon dioxide with water gives us glucose and oxygen. And so lastly, we have some non-membrane organelles that are in the cell. You have your ribosomes, which we talked about before. That's where the mRNA and tRNA meet and make proteins. You have things called microtubules, microfilaments, intermediate filaments. These are like your highways in the cell. It's how things move along in the cell. You have the cytoskeleton, which is the structure, the framework of the cell. Just like when a house is being built and you see the frame go up, that's what the cytoskeleton is. You have the centrioles that's specifically used for chromosomes and organizing them. And then you have cilia and flagella, which you've probably heard of. The flagella is that tail, whip-like tail that you see on the cell. And the cilia are these short hair-like fibers that are on cells. As we said, we have the nucleus, which is the brain of the cell. And we talked about it having a nuclear membrane, and then it had liquid inside known as nucleoplasm. Something we didn't talk about was that it has a dark spot known as the nucleolus, as you see here. And that's where ribosomes are made. And then inside the nucleus, we have chromatin and chromosomes. All right, so you don't get confused with this. All of it is DNA. Chromosomes are tightly called chromatin. And chromatin is just loosely like spaghetti DNA. So inside of the nucleus, you have your DNA, and it looks like spaghetti. At some point, it wounds up really tightly. So it's like you sticking your fork in the spaghetti and turning, and you making that big ball. Well, hey, inside the nucleus, the ball looks like the X. You know, that picture that you're so used to seeing of a chromosome. So when you hear the words chromatin and chromosome, it's all talking about DNA and genes. So know that anytime you hear DNA, genes, chromatin, chromosomes, it's all the same thing. It's all talking about your genetic makeup, your DNA. Okay, it's just telling you how it looks. Chromatin, it looks like a plate of spaghetti. Chromosomes looks like you've taken the spaghetti and wound it on your fork. But in the end, it's all DNA, which carries your genes. And then prokaryotic cells, as we say, don't have a nucleus, but they do have DNA or some type of nucleic acid. And as you see, they have ribosomes. They have a cell wall like plants do, cell membrane. And then they have something called adhesive membrane, which allow them to attach to a surface. They have a slime capsule layer, which allows them to also attach to one another. And then they have these flagellum, which allow them to swim. They don't contain a mitochondrial, chloroplast, Golgi, or ER network, endoplasmic reticulum network, like we've seen on others. And lastly, I don't think I go through these. No. So for this chapter, we end with slide 21. And so 22 through 28, you do not have to worry about. Hope this was helpful.